Hello, this video focuses around Chapter 14. This is the first chapter we're going to be working on in the Java 2 class. I thought this would be a fun way to start, and that is working with some GUI components and getting those concepts under our belt. And then we'll be able to apply those to applications that we're building that have some more advanced features to them. Okay, let's take a real quick look at the topics here. Um, JavaFX is a fairly new convention. Actually, it's not really all that new, but it's the approach that most of the modern developers are using. There were other methods for working with graphics in previous versions of Java, and even though they still work just fine, find that some of the features are a little bit antiquated looking, and thus are moved to JavaFX. Some of the other topics, I think you can read through those on your own. I also have mimicked some of these in our topic list on Blackboard. So I'm going to move on to the next page here. Okay, so they go into a little bit of a description here about JavaFX and some of the things that it does. And then they also take a look backwards at Swing and AWT. And those are libraries that have pre-existed. They still exist, and you can still use them if you uh, wish, but we're going to look on the most modern approach, and chances are if you're out in the work world, this is probably the approach you'll take anyhow. Now, the JavaFX libraries have a whole bunch of different things that they do, and whenever we are going to create an application, we are going to do a lot of import statements in order to be able to do the work. Now you can see here at the bottom of page 536 that their first example shows a number of those import statements at the top of the code, and then goes on to show some more code. Now, since we're looking at our first sample code snippet already, and we don't have the benefit of having stepped through the first 13 chapters to learn all the conventions of this book, I do find it necessary that we do take a really quick look at how this book is structured and where we can get the code to work through some of these things. Now, frankly, I think the preferred way to work, especially now that we're going to be using Eclipse, is to start typing some of this stuff out, because it will give you the feel of the interactivity that's involved with that IDE. But most of the in-chapter things, the code is provided by the publisher, so that we can just dive right in and work on things. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to Blackboard, and I'm actually going to close some of my extra tabs from my previous videos, and take a look at the stuff on the resources page here. And I'm thinking I had a link to uh, the textbook files, but apparently I don't. So I'm actually going to pause the video here for a moment, and I'm going to create a link for you guys so that you can find those particular items. So bear with me a moment. I've gone ahead and added to our resources page a link to the companion website. Now, if you follow that link, you should end up on this page here, and that will give you links to a couple of different things. One is the errata. It's not a bad idea to have this on hand. You can see every book's got issues, and right off the bat, um, we have stuff that we need to correct even in chapter 14. So always keep that link handy. Now I'm thinking that it might not be a bad idea if I just add this directly to Blackboard, um, and don't mind if I do right as I'm making this video. I'm sure you find that thrilling. Um, but I'm going to add that to our units folder. And with any luck, luck, it'll paste in beautifully. Not too bad. All right, so now we'll have that available to look at right inside the course shell. Okay, going back to the web page though, you will notice that they do have a link here to the source code. And then if you come in here, you can download the stuff that you want to see. And the one thing that I think is neat is you can download the sample files. And just for point of reference, I recommend that you get the ones that are sorted by chapter. Otherwise, you are searching for particular files in this like giant list. So this one makes more sense for the kind of stuff that we're doing. But the other cool thing is that he's actually created a website which allows us to link to some of the stuff that we're doing. So he actually shows the code. You can throw in your line numbers, and then you can actually, in the browser, run the program. And I don't know if my browser is potentially blocking it, but it's pretty cool that he's done that. So let's move on. But just to make a quick point here, and I don't know why this didn't dawn on me, it is Java. Chrome does not have Java plugins, and I don't know if you're aware of that or not. So if you were actually to do this work, you would want to switch to a browser like Firefox, assuming you have the Java plugins installed. So let's just do that. And I think I want to go back a link here. Let's drop that in. Okay, I'm assuming that maybe this is all this particular program does, so let's leave it at that for now. But just keep that in mind. The Java plugins do not necessarily work in Chrome, but the fact that he's got an example here that we can work from is great. But I would still encourage you to try to type in some of this code on your own, so that I think that's a better learning experience. I understand that if you just want to look at the examples, that works too, but I think it's helpful. All right, so let's get back on track to where we were. So we were looking at this very first example. And notice that the very first thing that we do in a JavaFX application is we have to make sure that this line is at the very top, because otherwise we cannot load any of the other components. Now there are a few other components that we throw in too, and you can see that some of the first ones here are for the scenes and the stage, and these are concepts that we're going to talk about a little bit in terms of like when you're working with graphical components, what we call things and how we determine what we're working with. As we step forward, you'll notice that the public class for the whole program is an extension of application. So it does actually take that JavaFX program that has all the key graphical components built into it, and we are in essence extending that and building off of that. So we're using that as our core. Notice that right off the bat we do an override, and that allows us to actually kind of like bring things in and get things moving. And then we are also doing this thing that is listed here, which is a public void start. And notice the parameters inside there, the arguments, that we're pulling in a stage, and it's a primary stage. So that actually becomes a data type of sorts. And some of this I think you can anticipate what it's going to do. One is going to be a button, and it's going to be an OK button. We create a new instance of it. Then we're creating a scene, a new scene, and then we'll talk about what these parameters do. But basically, they define the size of the object. We're giving it a title. We're setting the scene, and then we're going to show the scene. And I think that's excuse me, show the stage. So I think those are fairly intuitive as to what it's going to do. It's kind of like the graphical version of like Hello World, just very simply getting some stuff up on the screen. Of course, we still have a main method, otherwise it won't launch. And notice that we have a certain syntax here for making it work, and that is application.launch with the args in there. Now, once you bring it up and run it, you will get a little window that looks like this. So I think that would be a good first step for everybody, is to try to get that code and get it into Eclipse and try to get that to render. So I'm going to actually cease this video here for now, and then we can pick up shortly. So I want you to give that a shot before we move. Now I'm going to demonstrate it. So my recommendation is actually that you pause the video and see if you can do it on your own, and then come back, and if you're getting stuck on something, you can watch how I do it, and then you'll get a better feel. But I think that in terms of like moving forward in this course, instead of me holding your hand through every particular step, you need to start to take some of the steps on your own, and then come back and refer to me when you're getting stuck. All right, so I'm pausing here for now. Work on it, and then come back when you're all set, or if you're stuck. Okay, after a short pause, I'm back. For you, of course, it's just a couple of seconds, but I have to run and get the kids from school, if you want to know. But anyhow, we're at the point now where we're going to start taking our code and putting it into Eclipse and see what happens. Now, I added to the core shell links to our book where you can actually download the source code for the examples, which I just talked about a short while ago. And that will save you the typing. And that's in essence what I have done. And kind of as an intermediary step, I've loaded stuff into Notepad++ just to take a look at the code. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and drop it into Eclipse. Now, I went ahead and started Eclipse, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Java project. All right, we're going to give it a name, and I'm just trying to think here what the exercise name was. Let's call it my JavaFX. We're going to go with the default location. You can always change that location if you want to. You choose the JRE that we're using, which is going to be 1.8. We want the newest one. This setting is fine. Create separate folders for source and class files. That's going to be, you know, the thing that you typically want to choose. Really, I could argue that we're doing so little at this point that we could put everything into the same folder, but not very important at this point. Now, the other thing that you want to look at when you click the next button is some of these other things that are available for you. So, for example, if you had resources you want to pull in from other projects, or you had a library that you want to use in particular, these are the ones that come with the JRE, but sometimes there's ones that you need to add, and that would be where you would do it. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and say finish, and our project is created. Now I'm going to right click and do a new class file, and once again I'm going to call it my JavaFX, and notice some of the settings that you can work with here. It says public, you can make it a package, abstract, final, You can add your main method. I'm going to skip that for right now because we're pulling our code from somewhere else. We can also grab the constructors from the superclass where it does that automatically. Um, and I think you'll see that some of these tools are like, oh wow, I wish I would have known that sooner. Um, but we have to take it one step at a time. We don't want to overwhelm you with too much right away. So I'm going to click finish, and you can see that it created the structure for the program. All right, and then as I told you, I had grabbed the code and I'd pasted it into Notepad++, and now I'm going to actually grab it from here and work from this point. Now, I want you to take careful note of the fact that I'm skipping the part that says package, chapter 14. That would be appropriate if I was pulling it right from the folder um, where the files came from, which you might choose to do. But since I do these examples for many classes, I'm just stripping out this part, and then the package will take on the name of the projects, which is in essence the root folder. So I'm just going to copy that and come back over here to Eclipse, and I'm going to just replace all of this. And then I want you to take a look, and the first thing you're going to notice probably is that, oh my gosh, there's all these red underlines. That's not good, and we're used to that from other IDEs. But if I hover over them, just like in Visual Studio, you'll see that you will get an error message. Now, this does not mean we're doing anything wrong. It really is the result of Eclipse looking for a certain component that's not there, and actually, it's not that it's not there. It's that it is not available directly through the code, but yet we're trying to invoke it. And really, the way that we do that is by adding on a different tool, which we'll talk about shortly. Um, but here is the program itself, just as it is in the book. And I'm actually going to come up here and click the Run menu. And remember, as with other IDEs, when you hit that Run, it does a compile, or it saves it, it does a compile, and then hopefully runs the program. Now, in other programs, when you have errors that are being thrown, a lot of times it'll just stop you from doing the run altogether. Uh, Eclipse and working with Java is a little bit differently. It in some cases will have like a failure where you can't run it, but in many cases like this one, it will actually run because there's not anything really wrong with the code. It's just the access to certain components of the libraries that we're importing. All right, so you can see right off the bat it's asking us to save because that is the first step. And I'm just going to click OK. And notice it says errors exist, proceed with launch, and I'm going to proceed. And you're going to see that it does exactly what we had hoped, which it creates window with a big giant button on it, and we can click OK. It doesn't do anything, of course, because nothing is programmed to happen with that. So then with that, I'm just going to go ahead and close it. Now, it's kind of uncomfortable when you're working in this environment to see, okay, we got these red underlines. What am I doing wrong? The truth is you're not doing anything wrong. We just basically are missing a component that would help to take care of that problem. So that we can fix that using a number of different methods. One of the methods is one that I'm going to show you here in just a moment. I'm going to flip back over to Blackboard here. Okay, so I'm going to come over to Blackboard here, and then I want to show you that I added a link, and this might be an option here for some of you. It's one that I like to use on occasion when I'm kind of in a hurry, and that is to use this tool from this website that uh, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. Basically, there's a group of people that like to have a pre-configured version of Eclipse. Now keep in mind, Eclipse is freeware, open source, anybody can grab it and do whatever they want with it. And what this group here has done is they've created a distribution for Eclipse that is designed to take care of some of the issues that we just saw and give us a bunch of tools. Now, the actual tool that fixes the problem is this one here that I've highlighted, but you can see that what they do is they do nightly builds, and they basically take the most current version of Eclipse and the most current version of all of these tools here, bundle them together, and then release them all at once. And if you download this and decompress it, and I actually have this loaded somewhere on my machine here, just got to find where it is. And I created the separate folder Eclipse 2, and I'm actually going to go ahead and run this. And just like the other version of Eclipse, I mean, it looks identical. In fact, it's the same program. It's the Mars version. I'm just going to use the workspace that's already there. All right, now you can see that I have already copied this application in, and I was playing with it a little bit, and notice how the underline is not present in this particular tidbit. Now, I had deleted some of the other libraries as I was playing with it, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to replace all the code with the stuff from Notepad++ here. Kind of using that as like my clipboard, I guess. And you can see all the underlines are gone. And if I choose to run it, I'm not throwing any errors, because really there are no errors, and I get the exact same result. So that might be an option for you if you don't want to futz with installing little add-ons. My contention is, though, that as you're working in Eclipse, you might encounter these sorts of things all the time. So it's not a bad idea to know how to add in the stuff that's missing. So that's about what I'm going to show you next here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do a quick pause here. What I did while I paused is I put together just a real quick little list that I found online that somebody wrote down that I thought was nicely written and concise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow these instructions here, keeping in mind that I think they're a little bit dated. In fact, I know that that's not the most current version of that. So let's actually go out, make a new tab here. And of course it's an XML file. Let's see if we can find something a little bit more pertinent. I just happen to know what the most current version is, so I'm actually just going to type it in so I'm not hunting around. Oh, and it's not found. Okay, let me see if I can revise that real quickly. And once again, I'm going to pause because it did work for me earlier. Okay, so I found the correct link here and I updated it, so it is up to version 2.0. I thought it was version 2.1, but forgive me, I was wrong. All right, so let's go ahead and follow these instructions here. And basically what we do is we go to the help menu, we choose install new software, and then we're going to add, and then what we're going to do is we're going to type in JavaFX and we need this URL. Okay, and then you see that it's highlighted these two things. Okay, and then now that we have this up on the screen here, and I'm trying to get my little recorder to go away. We do want to take a look at the stuff that's inside these packages. Let me get my mouse to cooperate here. All right, so these are the individual little components that go with it, and we're going to select some of these. And we do want to make sure that we select the right choice here. Now, sometimes they offer different choices for the various versions of the IDE. And then there's all these subcomponents, and my opinion on it is we may as well just get all of them. You also want to make sure that this is selected, because that way, if there's updates to any of this stuff, it will look for them before putting them in. All right, so let's just go ahead and click next. You can see all the ones that are listed, and it looks like it's going to use these particular components. We'll say next. Of course, we will accept, like we have a choice. Now, when this is done, it should ask us to restart Eclipse. Let's just wait and see if that's the case. Take a look at the details as it's doing it. So what we're doing now is actually considered kind of like an advanced technique for those of you that have not done it before. And if you're shy about doing it this way, use the other approach that I just mentioned, which is to download the pre-configured package. Since they do nightly builds, it's very alluring to just use that and reinstall it. It's not a big download, and like I said, it's a portable thing, so you can pick up that directory, move it anywhere, and it will still run for you. All right, as it's doing its work, I'm actually going to pause for a second and wait for it to finish, and then I'll come back as soon as it's done. Okay, it's now done going through the process, and it says you will need to restart Eclipse for the changes to take effect. We'd like to restart now, and we have to say yes, of course. And in the interim, we'll wait for it to do its work. Hopefully it won't take too long. Now, the one thing that I saw on a couple little listings is that sometimes Eclipse doesn't recognize stuff right away, so if it doesn't, try restarting it again, but it should work really on the first try. All right, back up on the screen. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this welcome screen, and there's our application, and now you can see all the underlines have gone away. So my recommendation to you is to choose whichever approach is more comfortable for you. If you want to just go with that pre-configured package, that's fine. If you just want to add in the piece of software, that's fine. But now that we have that in, now we can get rolling really with all of our examples from the book. So I'm going to actually cap this video here because it's getting a little bit on the long side, and then I'll continue it going through some of this chapter stuff in the next video. So this video ends here. Move on to the next one.